CVTA to order. And ask everyone to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call for certification of a quorum, please?
Yes, hold just 1 second, please. Town of Ashland, Mr. Hodges.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. McGraw. Charles City County, Mr. Adkins.
Present.
Ms. Russell.
Present.
Chesterfield County, Chair Carroll.
Present.
Mr. Winslow. Goochland County, Mr. Spoonhour.
Here.
Ms. Lascolette. Hanover County, Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Davis. Nyko County, Mr. Thornton.
Here.
Ms. O'Bannon. New Kent County, Ms. Page.
Here.
Powhatan County, Mr. Byerly.
Here.
Mr. McClung. City of Richmond, Vice Chair Stoney.
Present.
Dr. Newbill. House of Delegates, Delegate Robinson.
Here.
Senate, Senator McClellan. Commonwealth Transportation Board, Mr. Brown.
Here.
Thank you. Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Miller.
Present.
GRTC, Ms. Adams.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Dean. VRPT, Ms. DeBrule. Ms. Dubinsky.
Here.
Let's see, Virginia Port Authority, Mr. Edwards. Ms. Vick. Ms. Nelson.
Here.
Thank you. And VDOT, Mr. Britch. Mr. Riblett. That concludes the roll call for attendance. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Let the record show that Shane Mann is here for VDOT today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Is there any, I'm assuming everybody's had an opportunity to look at the agenda. Is there anybody who may have any amendments to the agenda they would like to make before we start? Not seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion to approve the agenda and seconded, proper motion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes carried. Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm hoping that everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes that were presented and sent out. Are there any questions on the minutes? Move to approve. Motion's made to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's made to approve and properly seconded. Any other discussion on the motion to approve? Not seeing or hearing any. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carried. Chip?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. It is a full item on the agenda later on, but we do have some revised meeting logistics related to FOIA. So we have a statement that is printed with the agenda that I will also read out loud to accompany each meeting from here on forward. This meeting is being held in person and via Zoom. A link to the Zoom webinar where individuals may register to participate is posted at the top of this agenda. Members of the public are invited to submit public comments either verbally or in writing. Written comments can be submitted through the Q&A chat function on Zoom or to the email address at the top of this agenda. Written comments will be read aloud or summarized during the meeting when possible and will be included in the meeting minutes. Verbal comments will be taken, and please indicate by raising your hand or through the Q&A chat function on Zoom. This is for virtual participants. If you would like to comment. When acknowledged by the chair, please clearly state your name so that it may be recorded in the meeting minutes.
My understanding is this is now something we'll need to read at every meeting.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir, I appreciate it. CBTA, yeah, exactly, we'll make sure we throw in where the exits are. As chair, you would hope that, especially we'd have something more inspirational to talk about this morning, but we lost a regional leader, Don Sharp, from our Goochland County Board of Supervisors. And I would ask if you would indulge me in a moment of silence, and then I'm going to yield my report to Mr. Spoonhour for some brief comments. Thank you. Mr. Spoonhour.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. Yeah, it was very much a shock to the whole community, learning of Mr. Sharp's passing on last Saturday. Don, as he liked to be referred to, if you knew Don, you know he'd appreciate being called by his first name, because he was just that kind of guy. He and I were joined the board at the same time. We ran together, so we got to go to orientation together. We were the new guys, surrounded by folks that had been on there for 8+ years. So we really had a pretty close bond, and we're gonna miss Don a ton. You never had to guess what was on Don's mind. He was very open with his thoughts and his opinions and his fight to do the right thing, and that's what I think I appreciated the most. I found myself in a situation, and he jumped to my defense so fast that I couldn't get angry anymore because he was angry enough for the both of us. So that's just the kind of guy he was, and he's going to be sorely missed.
Thank you, Neil. I did get an opportunity also to know Don outside of our normal commission meetings from another organization that we were part of, and I did enjoy his company and conversation with him, and I know that he'll be sorely missed, not just by the Goochland residents, but many others who are friends with him. It just is unfortunate. We see this every day, but it's always a stark reminder that we should always make sure to tell people that we care about how we feel. So thank you. The agenda item number 5 is a bylaws amendment which adds the Capital Region Airport Commission as the CEO as an ex officio non-voting member, and I believe this would be the second reading of the amended bylaws, and this would be our final meeting. Mr. Gregory.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. It's a very basic bylaws amendment to add the Capital Region Airport Commission for the statutory change that was approved by the General Assembly earlier this year. So we welcome Mr. Perry Miller and just need to formalize that bylaws amendment to recognize their attendance and participation.
So this will require a roll call vote, I believe, right?
Yes, sir, please.
We have a roll call vote. Well, do we need an additional motion to approve? Or?
Yes, we do.
So I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Made by the mayor.
Second.
Seconded very closely by Mr. Thornton. So proper motion on the floor. Have a roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
Mr. Atkins,
Aye.
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Mr. Spoonhour,
Aye.
Mr. Peterson,
Aye.
Mr. Thornton,
Aye.
Ms. Page,
Aye.
Mr. Byerly,
Aye.
Vice Chair Stoney,
Aye.
Delegate Robinson,
Aye.
and Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving on, yes, sir.
Circulate a copy of the approved bylaws, everything.
You gonna take care of sending it out?
Just send it
Great,
to-
thank you very much. There'll be, for those who are viewing remotely, there will be a copy of the revised bylaws that will be sent out by Mr. Gregory. Committee reports, we'll move forward with those to the CVTA Finance Committee.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, did we skip over the public comment period?
You know, we may have, it's on this previous page. I appreciate you bringing that forward. We actually talked about the open public comment period. We actually read the statement about providing an opportunity for public comment. We even talked about the fact that we have to read it from now on in every meeting. But you're right, we didn't actually give anybody an opportunity to speak. So thank you for bringing that up. So we'll go back to item number 3, and we won't have to read it again, but we will add or ask if there's anybody from either remotely or in the audience who would like to provide some public comment today for the CVTA.
Mr. Chair, there's no request online or virtual to share public comment.
And I don't see any hands up in the room, but I will note that Senator McClellan is here. If you want to add her to roll call.
Thank you, I will.
Well, thank you, Mr. Peterson, for bringing that back up. We'll have to make sure we pay more attention to that next time.
I'm just trying to postpone my report, Mr. Chairman.
Somehow I doubt that, but I appreciate it.
Actually, it feels like the mayor ought to be giving this report. He's been doing it for 2 years, but.
I think he's glad that it's you.
I don't think he is, might be me as well, but. The CBTA Finance Committee did meet on Wednesday, September 14th. All were present, with the exception of the mayor, who was represented by his alternate, Dr. Newbill. The mayor had a very special, important announcement to make that morning, wasn't able to be with us. But with that, we had several items of discussion, but I'm going to go. The first one we talked about was the beginning of having an annual report for the CBTA. This is basically an informational thing. I'll let Mr. Parsons discuss that item with this full board, if you would.
Yes, sir, thank you very much. We discussed in an earlier meeting, I believe it may have been the July meeting, about the importance of having a stronger presence in the community for the CVTA. One of the ways to do that is to celebrate our accomplishments as an authority. Staff is making an effort to work with one of our on-call consultants to put together a great, concise annual report that talks about the commitments that the authority has made, close to $400 million in its first 2 years for regional projects. And we are hoping to have that back for your review and approval at the October meeting. It does fall under our administrative and operating budget. Finance Committee reviewed that mechanism and approved moving forward with it, or recommended moving forward with it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Any questions from Mr. Parsons before I continue? Okay, with that, after that, we did get a very good report from Ms. Clark from the TAC activities, but I'll leave all that discussion to Ms. Clark when she makes her presentation. We did have the request for reprogramming for the regional funds that came for us, and that was amended to our agenda. And we had a pretty significant discussion on that. Mr. Spoonhauer joined us in the meeting and shared Ashland's concerns. But rather than reporting on that and taking time now, this is on the agenda, so we will hold that part of the Finance Committee report until that point in time. That, the only other item we had, an administrative support position. This was brought to us by the staff and with a salary range that the Finance Committee did approve the RFI, or the advertisement for the position. We did not approve a timeline. So put it on hold. The position is one that we need to look at in terms of whether we want to put this out before or after bringing on a full-time director for executive director. And the question there is, do we want the executive director to be part of the process of the selection, or do we want to have this person in place before they come on board? So at this point in time, because we are not at that point, but we have approved the advertisement, but not the issuing up. And I believe that was the last item we had other than a closed session, which will be dealt with in closed session again today.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. One thing I will add that we did discuss at the very end, I think had to do with the new process that we'll be coming up with for actually advertising and hiring for an executive director. As you know, we need to go back into that. And the recommendation that I made was we bring the HR roundtable back before the finance committee at our next committee meeting to give some different proposals on how that process could work. And so the next finance committee meeting, I've asked for members of the HR roundtable to come forward to present us with information. And then from there, we will bring it back forward before the full committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for reminding me of that.
Well, I just thought of it myself, so don't feel bad.
Okay.
Get in my head too. Anything else, any other comments on the finance committee report? Any input?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
One other item that was on the agenda for Finance Committee was the discussion of a letter of support for the Vaughn Road overpass.
Sure.
The committee did recommend approval of that letter of support, and you have it in front of you now for signature. This will be one of the many new grant programs that are under the bipartisan infrastructure law, and staff is working with the town of Ashland and Hanover County to prepare that application for submittal by October. It's now been delayed. October 11th, I believe, is the due date. So this will be a great addition to that packet of grant materials to show that the CVTA has committed over $4 million in regional funds to that project.
And that was part of the
regional
transportation package for those who are watching at home.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons, for bringing that up. I must have stayed up too late watching football last night. But that was brought up to the Finance Committee and recommended for approval by the full board.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, just to express our appreciation for how quickly this is a new funding source and how quickly the staff and the CVTA have jumped on this. This is a perfect example of how this authority can help us take advantage of opportunities, and we really appreciate it.
So the letter drafted is, Dear Secretary Buttigieg, the Central Virginia Transportation Authority CVTA supports an FY22 application to the Federal Railroad Administration Railroad Crossing Elimination Program by the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization for the Vaughn Road Upgrade Separation in Ashland, Virginia. The proposed grade separation will improve the safety of the traveling public and the safe and efficient movement of freight on both rail and road networks by eliminating collisions between vehicular and train traffic. CVTA is further demonstrating its support for this grade crossing improvements through its April 29, 2022 commitment of $4,662,000 of CVTA regional funds toward the 20% local match for the grant. The remaining local match to be provided by the town of Ashland, Hanover County, CSX, and the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation. We urge you to fund this important improvement that will improve safety and network fluidity within our organization. As it was mentioned by Mr. Peterson, this was a positive recommendation from the Finance Committee, which comes to the board as a motion. I don't think we need to do roll call on this. We can do, so if you're in favor of us and me signing this letter on behalf of all of you, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Vice carried. Thank you. Anything else in Finance Committee?
Nothing else, Mr.
I
Chair.
don't know if anything else would jog our memories anymore than already happened, but we'll see what happens. I would ask for Ms. Clark to come forward. With a report for the town.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Diana Moore Clark giving the CVTA Technical Advisory Board update. This was held on September the 12th. There has been a majority of the localities that have submitted the required annual certifications for FY22. As a reminder, member governments have until the end of September to get their annual certifications turned in. I do want to provide a quick update on Smart Scale Round 5. The validation of applications are still underway and completion is anticipated in December. For clarity from our last TAC update, in the spring, when Smart Scale Round 5 projects have been announced, those projects leveraging CVTA funds can either select to keep CVTA dollars on the project or to let the funds go back into the pot. So essentially, currently the guidance gives a sponsor 2 rounds of Smart Scale to leverage their allocated regional CVTA funds on the same project. TAC discussed the Fall Line Trail. Chesterfield, Henrico, and Richmond submitted a draft spending plan that was combined with VDOT's design build spending plan. TAC discussed the request, but the spending plan cost exceeded available funds from both the CVTA and CTB combined. So this item will be the main item on the Fall Line Working Group agenda, as well as October tax meeting, so that we can hopefully have a recommendation for the October Finance Committee meeting. The next item TAC discussed was the readiness of CBTA regional projects in relation to producing a cash flow document for the Finance Committee. For this item, TAC members were asked to provide by September 26th a cash flow update on their regional projects moving forward. TAC anticipates having a draft cash flow document in October, but due to VDOT administering regional projects for some jurisdictions, as well as for segments of the Fall Line Trail, we anticipate a full cash flow document for the Finance Committee and full body by November meetings. The last item that we discussed was project selection and allocation framework review. So the authority, per the approving of the policies and procedures for the guidelines for the regional project selection, said that we would review the document annually. TAC discussed during this meeting extensively what we call parking lot items for the annual review and update of this framework. Item 1A is TAC is an agreement that having a regional funding cycle every other year. This would allow for the CVTA to know the outcome of the Smart Scale process, leverage future Smart Scale cycles, allows during off time to review, adjust funded projects with scheduling, cost overruns, and cost estimate changes. We discussed how to handle projects being submitted after application deadline closed. Specifically, there was a conversation about when a locality requests to reprogram current funds from one approved project to another approved project. The current guidance does not address the specific request, and it only addresses de-obligations of funds by a sponsor that would then go back to the pot. Therefore, this item will continue to be discussed on how we can better create guidelines and accommodate at the same time such requests. TAC discussed eligibility requirements. Every rural county expressed concern that in the future funding cycles, there would be a limited number of roadways eligible for regional funds. The TAC did not think that a separate scoring criteria for the rural should be developed based on this one category, and that being the highway category. TAC did discuss a special considerations category, which could take into account roadways that played a huge part in economic development, commuter route, or roadway that crossed multiple jurisdictional boundaries. There was no consensus on this item at this meeting. Project screening, TAC discussed the process will have both third party and VDOT to perform estimate validation for the regional projects. Lastly, project scoring and ranking and project selection are still items that TAC have not yet reviewed. This concludes my report.
Thank you very much. I think there is one thing to add to that, which is that all of the member jurisdictions have now submitted
Oh, perfect.
their reports. And just as a point of note, that in the future, when we send out notifications on when if those reports are due, they'll not only be sent to staff, but also to you as members of the CVTA, so that perhaps sometimes, our staffs, we all know, are very, very, very busy, as well as we are, and it doesn't hurt to have reminders for all of us to have discussions within our own organizations to make sure that we're properly meeting our deadlines. And so that is just a little minor change that we're going to institute in the future to make sure that we all get proper notifications. Does anybody have any questions on the TAC report? None? Fine, moving forward. Thank you very much. Moving on to other business, we have a request before us, which is part of the TAC report and part of the Finance Committee report, from Goochland to repurpose some funds. I'm going to ask Mr. Parsons to summarize, and then Mr. Spoon have an opportunity to speak to the report, to the request, since it's coming from Goochland.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I'd ask everyone to refer to page 23 in your packet. The first item in that page 23 and 24 is a letter sent from Goochland County on September 9th, directed to TAC members with two requested actions, requesting to reprogram $16.8 million in CBTA regional funds from Route 288 new southbound auxiliary lane to I-64 at Ashland Road Interchange. This is a DDI interchange. And the second request is related to the Route 288 new southbound auxiliary lane to keep that project eligible for funds through future applications for CBTA regional funding rather than close that out when the funds are moved off of it. There is a number of items of background that are listed by the county, 9 items there. And the TAC had extensive discussions, as Ms. Clark mentioned, related to this item. And the following page 25 and 26, is a summary of that discussion at the TAC on the 12th of September. Highlights of the committee discussion were included. Mr. Goyne, who is the Goochland County TAC member, shepherded that discussion in terms of what Goochland's opinions are and the requests that have been made. There was a motion to approve the request, and it was seconded. The vote to approve the request failed at the TAC, so there was no action that was put onto the agenda for you today to consider. The Finance Committee held a similar discussion on September 14th, 2 days later, and as Mr. Peterson mentioned, Mr. Spoonhour was present and had a lengthy discussion with Finance Committee members regarding the request, and some of the bulleted highlights of that discussion were included in your packet on page 26. No action was taken by the Finance Committee at that point. There was consensus that the matter should be brought before the full authority for discussion at today's meeting.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Spoonhour.
Thank you very much, Chair Carroll, and thank you everybody for considering this. I know a lot of you have heard about this, so I will try to be brief. This is incredibly important to Goochland, so please indulge me a little bit. So what we're asking today is unique. We find ourselves in a situation that we had not anticipated, and we believe that the flexibility allowed by having this commission warrants the approval of us trying to accomplish the biggest thing in Goochland County history. Quite frankly, we're asking to move the funds from an awarded project that Goochland has applied for, which is an auxiliary lane on 288, and move those funds to an already approved project, a higher priority project for Goochland County, which is the Ashland Road interchange, which is Ashland Road and 64. It's currently a failing intersection. Traffic backs up there during peak hours onto 64, and it's very dangerous. We have applied for every type of funding that we can for this. But because we have had, thankfully, very few accidents, we've had the lack of economic development, a lack of movement of goods, it had not scored well in the smart scale process. Thankfully, the region saw the value in this project and awarded us $14 million on top of the $2 million. So we have about $16.5 million for that project. So why am I coming to you today? On July 21st, Mr. Mann and his team came to Goochland to let us know that the proposed solution that we've been going after since 2018 of a double lane divergent diamond, a lane north and south, was not appropriate for that intersection, especially with the new project. And that there were no additional funds available, so that really, quite frankly, the proposed solution that we were going after is not the best solution for that. So what we are asking is to reallocate the funds from one project to another. That is something that Goochland has not wanted to do. We have not scored very well with smart scale applications, and we internally refer to offering up that project as the nuclear option. The nuclear option of, we finally got funds awarded to us to do something that's very good for the region. We cannot argue that that auxiliary lane would help the region, but we know, we don't just believe, we know that this project, which the economic development project that's coming in is codenamed Project Rocky. It is the largest online distributor of goods in the world, so you can pretty much guess who that code name is, but I'm not allowed to say it. They're bringing 1,000 jobs, 1,000 full-time jobs at 1,500 at peak. There's a $500 to $600 million investment. Now, we heard that the mayor was not able to be at the finance committee meeting because they had a large announcement. Chair Carroll had to leave the finance committee meeting because he had a large announcement. Goochland just wants to be able to have a large announcement. Selfishly. I appreciate this process. I appreciate that it's gone through TAC and that they looked at it with the lens that they appropriately should have looked at it. I appreciate that it went to the finance committee. That allowed me to kind of hear the concerns. Now I know one of our applicants in a zoning case goes through, and I can tell you I'd rather be on the side of the dais that I sit on than the applicant's side. But I want to address three of those concerns that were brought up that I think encompasses the large concerns, two of which I'll go through very quickly because there's really nothing I can do about it. I appreciate Mr. Ure bringing up his concern and saying the quiet thing out loud, in that the Henrico needs that auxiliary lane. In the meeting, Mr. Ure said, Henrico is counting on that project because it's in the base build package for the shore pump improvements in the report that we've already submitted to VDOT. So I understand that this is important to Henrico. It's important to Goochland as well. However, and it's a tough position because if Henrico wants this project, quite frankly, all they have to do is vote no to this and they get it. And there's nothing I can do about it. So it's not really worth me trying to convince you that Goochland's needs are better than Henrico's needs. I can just point out that fact. Mr. Ure also brought up the fact that we had reached out to the Secretary of Transportation's Commerce and the Governor's office. All at the Mr. Mann, when I looked at Mr. Mann, I said, okay, well, you brought 8 folks here what's the solution? He said, if you know anybody in the governor's office, give them a holler. Oh, I didn't, now I do. I want to be clear, everything that we have gone forward with, there are no guarantees. We aren't jumping the line on anything. And Mr. Ure's comments that the government and the secretary are strong-arming the CVTA and trying to impose their will on regional funds just isn't true. What I've been told is what the process is. Mr. Brown and I had a lengthy conversation about the best way to leverage a smart scale application, and that is for Goochland to bring more money to the table. That's just how the scoring mechanism works. Goochland, we get $200,000 a month in the local funds. They're spent. We've spent them on ensuring that our fire trucks can get through lights and some other smaller projects. We don't have the funds available other than what has already been awarded. To say that the governor and the secretaries are influencing their will is just certainly not the case. They had sent a letter to the Board of Supervisors asking us to approve the rezoning, which we did just 10 days after we found out that the proposed solution wasn't going to work. knowing that we were going to have to be here and work to find a solution. I can't put a failing intersection in the middle of the main artery into our county. I just can't in good conscience do that, nor will the citizens let me do it. So that's why I'm coming to you for your help. And that brings me to my last point, and I do believe Ms. Clark stated it when she said that there is no process for this. So I understand, and I've had conversations with several of you saying, well, this kind of feels arbitrary. Like, so what, we're just supposed to just willy-nilly move projects around? And I would say absolutely not. I hope most of you know me by now from working with me for the last 3 years, that I'm a rule follower. You know, I'm not coming to you because we missed a deadline or because we just willy-nilly came up with a solution that wouldn't work. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because the solution that we were going after is not the proper solution that we were awarded. I'm asking us to not come up with any more dollars other than to reallocate. And I also want to be clear about something else. The second piece of our request about the keeping it open for the auxiliary lane, that's not to say, oh, we just want to be able to reapply. We want to be able to go through the same process. We just didn't want that to be killed as, okay, well, you can never apply for funding again. So we're not asking you to earmark that, to reserve it. We will follow that process, and hopefully in a regional locality in future rounds, work with Mr. Thornton and Henrico County to do that. But not following the process and being arbitrary is actually the antithesis of what we're doing. I would argue that by not allowing us the flexibility to fix a solution that we know is not going to work. So I could take $17 million and pretty much throw it away by moving forward on this project. That's the wrong thing. In our charter, it says the role and responsibility, the authority is responsible for administering the Central Virginia Transportation Funds by providing broad financial guidance and oversight to the funds to include the approval of fund distributions. That's why we're all here. We're here to make these hard decisions. We don't have a process for this. So to say that we are, to say that we can't do it because we don't have a process, that's more arbitrary than making this what is, I believe, and most everybody that has said and spoken has said, this is the logical solution. This is the most common sense solution and arguably the right solution. We just don't have a path forward. But I believe that this is the path forward, and I just ask you to support this. And Mr. Chair, if you're ready for a motion, I would make a motion so that we could get further discussion.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the CVTA allow Goochland to reallocate the funds that were previously awarded to the 288 auxiliary lane project to the Ashland Road project to support its 2022 smart scale application and support the proper and the right solution for the region.
Do you have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll open the floor for discussion. If you'll indulge me for a second. I had asked staff when this request came to take a look at what would happen to the scoring of the I-64 project if we did in fact take the money from one project and put it towards the other. Can you kind of give us an update on that?
Yes, we had this discussion at, I believe, at Finance Committee as well.
We did?
We are able to kind of back of the envelope assess what the change in priorities would be. We are not able to fully vet the project due to the land use considerations and all of the work that would have to go into the travel model to fully score.
But just on the money, it moved up, right?
Just for the money, it moved up. And it about 5 spots, I believe, was the change.
Ended up landing 14th position.
Correct, instead of 9th.
Okay. Just to add to the discussion, and then I guess I can hold and see if anybody else has something they want to say first, and I'll finish later.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a comment or two. I did hear some comments about procedural, and I do think we need to be very careful, and we need to be very prudent about process, and particularly beginning an organization like this, we got to make sure that we do find that process that we're going to need and work. And where that, we can be extremely flexible in supporting plan that's out there at the present time. But we don't want to negate how important the process is for beginning organization like the CVTA. So I did hear some comments, but we want to make sure we're careful because semantics can come back to haunt us. So let's make sure that when we husband an idea, we want to keep in mind that it's not in Henrico, it's not a Ashland, it's not any kind of county. This is really for the whole region. So I would like for us to keep the notion, we must get a process, that we must sustain that process. And you may recall, due to transparency, we did suggest there is a time for flexibility. And as there's a time for flexibility, there's also a time to make sure we put the most, I call it propitious process in place for the CVTA when we as commission no longer around. But what's more important is that this sustains this region and this state. So I want to make sure that we hear that in public so that sometimes when we are in wish of something, we say things, but we need to be a little bit careful and guarded when we talk about an organization like this, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
So, Mr. Chair, I don't have my hearing aids on today, so I have a question. What did you say about I-64 money?
And nothing to do with your section.
Okay. The other thing that I have to say, and I said I wasn't going to say anything today, but I have to, and that is we don't have a confirmed process in place for this. But I would ask this organization to consider one thing. With the rising interest rates, with the cost of product, of material, we don't know, not a Ashland, not a rural county, but we don't know what projects are already in smart scale that could possibly come back and more funding be needed because of the rising cost of material. And so I know that the rural counties constantly sit here and plead for our needs. However, that can absolutely switch. And so I think that we have a process, but as our past chair said, we have to have room for flexibility. And also we have to see at times when we have projects, as everybody knows, coming to our localities, we don't have all the information that's needed at that time to meet a deadline. However, Ashland had enough information as far as their project, not as far as their submittal and the additional needs and the cost for their project. And so there are some things that I think that we need to guard very well, and there are some things that we need to be very flexible about. And in reading this, it was not to take the other project off, it was to simply put money from one project to another project. Maybe not simply, but to do that. So I ask that we take in consideration, because I dare say that Ashland got 1,000 people that they're gonna be able to hire at this no-name project. So they're gonna be soliciting from all of the surrounding localities, which will put far more traffic on this already strained intersection. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Mr. Peterson.
Mr. Chairman, I have great sympathy for Ashland County. They're in a position that it was not their fault that they got into. It was some issues, and I certainly want to do everything we can to help them. On the other hand, we've got to remember we're dealing with CVTA regional funds. And I think Ashland has taken the very humble approach of saying, we need to get these funds here. We'll take them from the other project that is in Ashland. Where the reality is, we're looking at a pot of regional funds for the whole region. And by doing so, I mean, Hanover County probably is the second biggest beneficiary of moving this because Ashland Road coming in is just a couple of miles away. And we have a lot of our citizens come in there. But my question is not so much, if we're moving things around because a mistake was made on one of these projects, but they were all ranked, and the two tank, it was ranked through, that's 1 through 30, I believe, is that correct, Mr. Parsons? All of these were ranked based on information we had at the time. Now we found out we got a bad piece of information that was used in that ranking. But we should not be looking at saying, taking this project just because it's in Goochland as the big place where we find funds to bring over to the other project. We need to look at the whole big picture. These are regional funds. And, you know, would it be better to look at project number 30, whatever that is, which is probably, if it's ranked 30th, is probably the least likely to rank with Smart Scale. Would these be the better places? Would it be wise for us to go back to TAC and say, okay, now you've got the real facts? And plus the other aspect of it, right now, I think that all these estimates that are in there were 3%, based on 3% inflation. That's not valid. Is it feasible? And which is, I think we need to do all we can to help Goochland out on this, but at the same time, we still have to keep this process working and realize we're dealing with regional funds. And that I think it's penalizing Goochland to say, hey, we get all the funds from your other project, when we need to be looking at the total region as far as where we adjust things.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. I see that Mr. Brown has his hand raised. Mr. Brown.
Good morning. I just wanted to chime in. I've had the opportunity to speak to Mr. Springhauer on a couple of occasions about this. And although I appreciate Mr. Thornton's comments about our infancy, I mean, this process is new to the Central Virginia region, but there are other models that have where this has been done around the state, and quite frankly, at the CTB with regard to Smart Scale, and it is not atypical for dollars to be reprogrammed to deal with current needs. I'll remind this committee that when the raceway, when NASCAR was looking to invest significant dollars into the raceway, Henrico came to me and said, look, we have several projects that have been funded, but are of lower priority to us than investing or attracting the investment in economic development around the raceway. And we moved about $40 million from other projects, principally that were in Henrico County, to be able to do that. And so I would just really plead with this body to recognize, let's not put form over substance. The substance here is that Goochland has an opportunity to attract 1,000 jobs, and those jobs will not just benefit Goochland, they'll benefit the entire region. There'll be employees from Richmond, from Hanover, from Henrico, from Chesterfield, who will be employed by that opportunity. There's going to be a tax-based development, and to allow form to cause Goochland to lose this opportunity in the near term, I think would be very disappointing. Secondly, and again, I want to clarify, what Goochland is doing and Mr. Springhauer is leading is trying to position their Smart School application to be as competitive as possible. And what I've shared is that, look, the project has to score, but then there is some discretion on the part of the CTB, and that I have the ability to influence. And but I'm only able to do that to the degree that it is competitive. And so if we want to bring the state dollars to help close the gap, and I recognize it was not anything Goochland did wrong, it was just the inflationary issues and other engineering consequences, I need the application to be competitive so that I can work with my colleagues at the CTB to try to bring the additional $30 million or more to this region. And so, again, I completely understand Mr. Peterson's comments, and I think if we had a process, or there was a willingness of this body to ask the TAC to go back and reprogram all the dollars to elevate the allocation to the I-64 project, the Western I-64 project, to clarify from this page, then I would support that as well. But I think that might be more disruptive than what Mr. Spoonhour is asking. And so I support this motion. I'm going to do everything I can to help Goochland, both at the CTB and otherwise with regard to the administration. I spoke to the secretary yesterday. I know that this is a regional process and that shouldn't matter, but the reality is this is important to not just Goochland, but to the region, to the state. It's important that we demonstrate our readiness and openness for business. And I would just ask us not to let form override substance here with this project. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Brown. Mr. Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is a classic issue, obviously. Would like to echo the comments and support the process. I think there is substance to the process. My larger concern is that construction funds coming from the state, from the General Assembly, are declining this year and even more significantly next year. We need a process, I think, that we can all rely on, providing flexibility. I think this is a worthy project. I think there's no question it's regional. We need 4 lanes, not 2, diverging diamond. A land use decision has been made, a commitment really to the region, which I think we should support. But I believe the process is important and is going to grow more important given how competitive new construction money is going to be, and as noted by Ms. Page, increasing construction costs. So I would echo Mr. Peterson's comments that we should consider restructuring or reconsidering our ranking, hopefully in time to support the Goochland project and follow the process, if I understood that.
Pretty much what I'm saying. I think we need to look at other projects besides just the 288 project as resources to be allocated for this economic development situation, actually.
Thank you. Mr. Carter.
I don't want to interrupt, Mr. Chairman, but just for purpose of the motion, Mr. Spoon, just to pay attention to the motion itself was to reprogram those funds.
That's correct.
While the discussion has sort of veered in a different direction, and I believe that what you're suggesting could be done after, if this motion were to be approved, you could go back and sort of.
That's.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being a neighboring county to Goochland and listening to what the other side of the table said, I thought maybe I'd just make a little fair, bring a little conversation from this side too. Thank you. No, I appreciate Mr. Thornton's comments about the process and Mr. Spoonhour's comments of following the rules and trying to go by that. But as an organization that is in its infancy, so to speak, still, and I don't know how long we can continue to say infancy, but for right now.
Not much longer.
I think we're okay with it. This won't be the first time that we experience a situation like this to where something arises to where we have to make a big decision. That's a critical decision. There'll be more times where this comes into play. But from my perspective, I think that you have to be able to adapt. You have to be willing to make some changes as you grow, as you develop. I think that this organization is an organization that was created to represent the region collectively. I understand, some people could maybe say, there's some selfishness to it, and maybe there is, but the region, I think, benefits from this project. How it gets funded, if according to the motion, if it comes from that one project, I agree that in the future, there should be a conversation with what Mr. Peterson has said, that There should be other sources that we should look at regionally, not just one. I think that Goochland should be applauded for trying to say, we just want to take funds from our project as opposed to trying to collect it from the region. The economic development, I think the region benefits from this, the economic development. So from my perspective, I support the motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
If I could make a brief comment, I know you think Kevin's talking, it's not gonna be brief, but I think everyone's made some really great points in relation to this. I will say that, as an example, it's not like Goochland's coming to us with a project that was not part of the project list that we approved in April, May. We approved a $276 million transportation project then. So it's one of the projects that was actually approved and scored. Second point I'd like to make is that we actually have deviated from the process on several occasions. One being, as an example, when we were given the opportunity to get an additional $8 million for the northbound project from the state through a technology, wasn't a grant, but it was technology money, essentially. We did add that project into the mix at I think past the deadline. And then after we voted on the transportation package, we came back and then added money for the I-64 widening project after we had a more robust discussion amongst ourselves and amongst also the General Assembly, who were gracious enough to put in I think $470 million towards that project. And so we have had some flexibility in the process that we've executed in the past. If this had not been a project that had been submitted, then I think we would be looking at this differently, quite frankly. But we also do have some other flexibility in the future, and it's something we need to bring before the Finance Committee. Mr. Peterson brings up a good point, and that is that, you know, we voted when we did that package to do a 90-10 proposal, 90% pay-go and 10% reserve funds. And I think looking at the $276 million package that we passed, even with the 3% built in as an estimate for an increase, we all know that inflation was 8.3%, I think last week is what it was announced, which means all of those projects that we're currently looking at, regardless of how they score with Smart Scale, common sense tells us that they're all gonna come back with a higher price tag. And we're gonna all have to come back to the table and say, all right, how are we gonna fund the higher price tag? And it may require our financial advisor coming in, give us additional options, ones which could be changing our financing structure and actually putting some reserve, more than a 10% reserve in place, which would give us the operating funds to be able to allocate to offset the additional cost that could be generated through the increased cost in the projects. And so we do have some more work ahead of us in relation to this. The issue we have today before us is, unfortunately, there's a time crunch, and if I'm correct, Mr. Brown can probably answer this question for me, but I believe that the Smart Scale applications, or actually Mr. Mann can answer the question, are due next month.
We've got a hard deadline of October 15th.
Right.
Add this fund.
So we don't have time right now to go back and readjust our lists. We need to, if we're gonna do it, we need to do it today to give them the opportunity to do that. We can go back later. I don't wanna leave the other project out. I think it can stay in place. And we can look at reallocating funds when we look at repurposing. And it'll stay in the Smart Scale list. And again, as said in TAC, it lasts for 2 years. And after Smart Scale goes through, we may see that some of those projects just didn't do well at all, and we may reallocate money at that point. But I do think that when, we're on a time crunch for this particular project. Is there any other discussion from any of the members?
Mr. Chairman, call the question.
Question has been called. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
Mr. Atkins,
Aye.
Mr. Carroll,
Aye.
Mr. Spoonhour,
Aye.
Mr. Peterson,
No.
Mr. Thornton,
Aye.
Ms. Page,
Aye.
Mr. Byerly,
Aye.
Vice Chair Stoney,
Aye.
Delegate Robinson,
Aye.
Senator McClellan,
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, members, for that very thorough and robust discussion moving forward in our next. Is there a question? Okay. Good note. I think the next agenda item is the CVTA Plan RVA MOU, which is, I think, on page 27. And I think Ms. Heater is going to speak to that. You can have my chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item has been on the agenda a few times. The Finance Committee did meet at the last meeting to review actually at the last two meetings, the Finance Committee reviewed the contents of the MOU. It was circulated for about a month to receive comments from any of the CBTA members, and it cycled back through the Finance Committee at their last meeting with a recommendation to approve today. If the authority approves the MOU, it will go back to the full commission, well, rather the executive committee of the commission at their October 13th meeting for final approval to execute. This is a different type of agreement. This cycle, we are proposing a bit of a longer term, but there are provisions included in the document that allow for annual review so that we can maintain good communication between the Planning Commission, PDC or Plan RVA, Executive Committee, and presumably the Finance Committee or full authority to maintain good working relationship. And it also designates a different reimbursement structure, if you will, to be able to accommodate for the anticipated hire of the new CVT Executive Director. As you all know, that individual will be an employee of Plan RVA, but will be allocated, if you will, 100% to the CVTA with supervisory authority, performance evaluation, all of the direction with regard to supervision and priorities will be the responsibility of the CVTA. The costs for that position are passed through Plan RVA, but just reimbursed at a dollar for dollar basis. And then services provided by Plan RVA, including operational support, technical assistance from our planning team, or other administrative and logistics assistance will be continue to be billed to the CVTA on an hourly basis with our 10% administration fee tacked on.
Thank you. One point of order before we move forward, and I failed to do this, so I apologize to the members and so to those who are viewing at home. The last vote that we had, for the record, I would just like a report as to whether it passed or didn't pass. I believe, based on the votes I heard, that it did, but I just want to make sure on the record.
She reported that it did pass.
Okay, all right, so I missed that. Very good. I'll entertain a motion here on the MOU.
So moved.
Motion made.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Yeah,
Yes.
there is a minor amendment on page 2 of the MOU that's presented, so if I may,
Please do.
request Mayor Stoney to offer his motion to approve it as amended.
Approved as amended.
Thanks, Mayor.
Motion's been amended to approve as amended and seconded. Any discussion on the MOU or the motion? I think we can do all voice vote on this. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
So because it is a financial obligation, I would.
We will do a roll call. Sorry, tried to get through it.
Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
Mr. Atkins,
Aye.
Mr. Carroll, sorry, Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Mr. Spoonhour,
Aye.
Mr. Peterson,
Aye.
Mr. Thornton,
Aye.
Ms. Page,
Aye.
Mr. Byerly,
Aye.
Vice Chair Stoney,
Aye.
Delegate Robinson,
Aye.
That's good.
Senator McClellan,
Aye.
and Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you. Heard it that time. Appreciate it. Moving forward to the FY 2022 annual certification, FY 23 local allocation plan, which is on page 33 in your packet, Mr. Parsons.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. As we shared during I believe it was the TAC update, the certifications for FY22 expenditures of local funds were sent out. We can now report as of this morning, all 9 plus GRTC have been returned, signed. So thank you all very much for your support in getting those shepherded through. The other item in the packet is I believe it's on page 44, is as it stands, the FY23 local allocation plan, which is we'll call it a snapshot of all of the projects that are intended to be funded with CVTA local dollars for the current fiscal year. So from July 1 through June 30th of 2023. This is actually a really good tool for each of us to use in describing what CBTA is doing. This is this is just over 2 pages of projects that have been identified by each of our jurisdictions and GRTC that show the kind of the breadth of funding that is supported through the CBTA just at the local level and is expected to be implemented this year. So again, once we start building the list of all the projects that are supported by local and regional funds, from FY21 to the current, it's really astounding to show the level of financial support that the CBTA has provided.
Thank you, sir. One thing I would ask is, I noticed in the packet that it did not have the letters from each jurisdiction, had some of them, but the other ones came in late.
That's correct.
So I would ask that when those other letters can be scanned in, they be added to the online information so that any other jurisdictions who want to go back and review the agenda later can also have access to those. Since we're all going to vote today to approve them, I think they all need to make sure that all of those letters are part of the packet. I do appreciate the fact that they were turned in, but I certainly think that members would like to have the opportunity to see them in the future if necessary. I'll entertain a motion now at this time to approve the annual certification FY23 local allocation plan.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Now I'm going to ask again, do we need a roll call vote for this one?
Yes, sir.
All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Move forward.
Wait, you asked, you
Oh.
roll call vote, and I said yes.
You said yes.
There's dollars
If
involved.
I can't make people laugh on a daily basis, I'm not having fun, so let's do a roll call vote.
Thank you.
Okay, we can do that right now. Mr. Hodges.
Aye.
Mr. Atkins.
Aye.
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Mr. Spoonhour.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Aye.
Mr. Thornton.
Aye.
Ms. Page.
Aye.
Mr. Byerly.
Aye.
Vice Chair Stoney.
Aye.
Delegate Robinson.
Aye.
Senator McClellan.
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Just to make sure the motion was made by Mr. Peterson and seconded by Mr. Hodges.
No,
Mr. Thornton. Okay, thank you very much.
Very good. Under new business, the FOIA Council Guidance Compliance for Electronic Meetings, Mr. Gregory.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the body, you have before you 2 policies that are recommended for your approval today. A voice vote will be sufficient to approve them. These are to provide for your compliance with the new provisions of the Freedom of Information Act, which were approved by the General Assembly this past session. The 2 policies address virtual participation for all virtual public meetings. You may have heard about this at your respective local governments. Local public bodies are not permitted to conduct their meetings by all virtual public means, but this is a regional body, so you're able to do that as long as you have a policy in place and you comply with that policy. So this policy is in compliance with the statute. If you adopt this policy, you will have the ability to conduct your meetings by all virtual telecommunications means. It doesn't mean you have to do that, but we believe it's prudent to put that policy in place just in case, as we all know, in this circumstances may arise where you need to do that. So this policy would allow for that. The second policy is for remote participation of individual members. As we can see today, and as we have seen a lot in the past few years, remote participation of members from time to time is necessary. And so this policy is not unlike the previous policy you had in place, but is consistent with the new provisions of FOIA and would again allow for individual members to participate by remote telecommunications means as the circumstances require. They do have to comply with policy in requesting their ability to participate remotely, and it needs to be approved, that kind of thing. And we'll work with staff and the body to make sure compliance is achieved under those policies if we're. Thank you.
Great. Anybody have any questions on the proposed policy change? I actually think it's a good idea, especially for our legislative members who, when they come into session, will not be able to come here in person because they're tied up in other committees and other duties during that time. I also think in terms of inclement weather, for example, if we get hit with a snowstorm or a hurricane or something else, it's always great to have that flexibility. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the policy.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded, and I've been told we can do a voice vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carried. Very nice.
Mr. Chairman, and that was the motion to approve both policies.
Both policies, yes.
Yes, sir.
Both policies, yes. Now our next item is a closed session, and so I think there may be those who are remote viewing who should have been sent the link to be able to dial back in. So if you want to jump out of this session and jump into the other one, and I don't think this closed session is going to take long, but I think it's something we need to have a closed session discussion on.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Hey, now. How you doing? Hanging in there. Oh.
You okay?
All right.
We need Mr. Brown back.
Barbara Nelson and Mr. Brown are both still in the closed session, so I messaged them and let them know what's going on. I think they could potentially, I don't know how you want to handle that.
Can they hear us there?
No, they can't hear what's going on because they're in the closed session.
We still have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. I think we can do it without them and then go right back in there.
Mr. Chairman, members of the body, I would request a motion to convene in closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Freedom of Information Act, Section 2.23711A1, for discussion of personnel matters concerning Plan RVA and CVTA employees and service to the authority under the Memorandum of Understanding for Administrative and Technical Support Services, and pursuant to Section 2.23711A8 for consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters.
So moved.
Seconded? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're in closed session. We'll switch
Thank
over
you.
to the other monitor now. Now we can't talk about anything. Message before.